Welcome to the SAFeTy Chronicles, exploring how to keep people and pets safe from the cycle of interpersonal violence. I am your host, Allie Phillips, founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, the SAFeTy Program, a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence shelters to eliminate the pet housing barrier to safety. As the founder, I have led the global movement in helping domestic violence shelters create on-site pet housing while elevating the criminal justice response to how animal abuse links to crimes against people. I am a former prosecuting attorney, internationally recognized legal expert and public speaker, award-winning author, and advocate for protecting vulnerable victims. In this podcast, we will explore how and why animals are harmed in the cycle of family violence and the human-animal bond that keeps victims in harm's way with their pets. Guest speakers and I will share strategies for shelters and professionals working to safeguard survivors, why pet-inclusive sheltering is life-saving, and safety tips for those who need help. None of the content will be graphic. If you are in harm's way, please contact your nearest domestic violence shelter or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the SAFeTy Chronicles. So, first of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it because I love doing this podcast. And I know I'm not a daily podcaster simply because there's probably just not enough information to cover for a daily podcast or even a weekly podcast. But when I have a topic, I want to bring it to you. And the whole reason that I do this podcast is because if I can help save the life of one person and their pet, I've done my job, and I'm going to feel great about that. I'm never going to know unless that person reaches out to me. So this podcast isn't even about having a ton of followers. Although I would like a lot of followers, because the more people that listen and understand the human-animal bond and understand the necessity for pet-friendly domestic violence housing, the safer people are going to be with their pets. So if you are listening to this and you have not subscribed to this podcast, please click the button. We'd love to have you because it means a lot to the people who donate to Sheltering Animals and Families Together. They want to see that we are making an impact. But for me personally, even if I never get another dollar into the SAFeTy program, which my board of directors would not be happy to hear me saying that, but even if I never get another dollar, I'm still going to be doing this because if it saves the lives of one person and one pet, it's why I created the SAFeTy program. It's why for years and years and years, I did this work and grew this program before it was even a nonprofit, before it even had a dollar to its name. So this is a passion project and a soul mission for me. So thank you for being here and thank you for letting me digress. I have my coffee in my cat coffee cup and let's get started about how do you evacuate with your pet if a natural disaster hits? So natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, forest fires, floods are becoming more frequent. And if you have a pet, it is really, really important to have a plan now. Not this weekend, not next month, now. Because you need to know what to do if you have to evacuate quickly. Because when we are in very stressful situations, traumatic situations, our brain does not process effectively. It just doesn't. We struggle to make decisions because the brain goes into survival mode. And so it can be very, very difficult to do that. Now, what I generally do when I am talking about preparing for a natural disaster, to me, domestic violence is a disaster because too often a victim needs to evacuate an abusive environment quickly. And if they have a pet, it can be more difficult. Just like if you're evacuating a hurricane, an earthquake, a flood. But it can go a lot smoother and a lot more stress-free if planning is done now. Okay. So if you go back to episode 12 of the podcast, I talked specifically about pet safety planning in regard to domestic violence. Okay. So you can go back and listen to that because I'm not really going to go through that again. What I want to talk about in general is really recognizing the human animal bond and that we are not, you and me, we're not evacuating anywhere without our pets. And if you have big animals, if you have farm animals, if you have horses, it can be really, really difficult. And I remember back in, when was this? 2005? Is that when Hurricane Katrina was? Oh my gosh. I need to squirrel for a moment. So hang with me. So when Hurricane Katrina was coming, and everybody knew it was coming, I was actually in charge of running a child abuse national conference for prosecutors and law enforcement in Mobile, Alabama. And our hotel was literally right there, right in the path. And it was literally days before the conference was going to start. And so we were monitoring it heavily. And I'll never forget when I actually saw the hotel float away into the Gulf. It's like, I think our conference is canceled. And about a week later, I actually went down to Jackson, Mississippi and helped an organization with the animal relief efforts. And what I saw was horrific in how people were not allowed to evacuate with their pets. People were separated from their pets and not allowed to see their pets. So I was at basically a fairground in Jackson, Mississippi. And while we were inside caring for the animals, a lot of the owners were outside in the parking lot sleeping. And there was very limited opportunity for them to see their pets. And I remember being an advocate and talking to the lead person who was organizing that disaster response. And I just said, this isn't right. They are literally outside. And you're telling me that they can't come in and see their pets? And it didn't sit well with me. And I remember flying back. This is when I was living outside of Washington, D.C., and I was working for the National District Attorneys Association. And I remember flying back, and I was on a layover in the Charlotte, North Carolina airport, and I lost it. Like a traumatic mental and emotional breakdown to where the gate agent called the airport police. And I was so grief-stricken about what I saw and how the people were behaving toward the pet owners. I just couldn't hold it in. I couldn't breathe. Like, I don't know if it was a panic attack. I don't know if it was grief. And I apologize to the person who had to sit next to me on that US air flight getting back to DC because I was not a good seatmate. And so I remember getting back to the office and I started talking to people at the national level, not in animal protection, because I saw all the animal protection groups fighting. They were fighting for donor dollars. Okay, I get it. They got to pay their staff. I get it. But I didn't like what I saw. There were some groups that were hoarding food and not sharing it with others. I need to do a whole separate podcast on this. But I started reaching out to the lawyers and I'm like, we have to do something. And so I was put on a committee with the American Bar Association dealing with animals in natural disasters. And as a result of our work, we were able to get federal legislation that President Bush signed that in order to get FEMA money, places they have to plan for animals. So anyway, I was really, really a big part of this issue back in the day, and I'm still very passionate about it. So, what I want to do right now is give you some practical tips on how you can prepare if you need to evacuate a disaster, whether it's a natural disaster or domestic violence. And I'm going to talk about packing your grab and go bag, not only for you, but for your pets. And you need to build this bag. I got a bag. I actually should probably show you what it looks like, but I forgot to bring it to this recording. But excuse me, for the bag, use a waterproof backpack or a small waterproof, like zippered shoulder bag. Make sure it's waterproof because if you are evacuating a flood, you do not want everything to get wet. So make sure waterproof backpack or a zippered bag. It has to close, okay? For your bag, for you, be sure to include a Ziploc bag that has paperwork in it. So maybe it's property ownership information like the deed to your house, your mortgage, insurance papers for your home and for your car, your birth certificate, passport, social security card, medications. I have like a separate detachable hard drive that basically has everything on my computer on this separate hard drive. It's in that Ziploc bag. So that if I forget to grab my laptop, which I can't fathom, I would not grab it. I would grab my 3 cats and my laptop and go. That's my order of priority. But separate hard drive so that you don't lose basically everything. And then, so that's all in a Ziploc bag that goes in your waterproof bag. You're going to want to put a couple bottles of water in there, maybe a few snacks, and cash. Okay? I know we have moved away from a cashless society. Get cash in that Ziploc bag as much as you can put. I mean, if you can put several $100s, put it in there because where you end up going, if you end up at a pet-friendly hotel, what if their credit card system is down and they can only take cash? And you're driving and you need gasoline, and because a lot of times the internet, that sort of technology goes down, you need cash, put cash in the Ziploc bag. Okay? Now, you also need to have a variety of routes mapped out to get out of town and to avoid traffic. So like I already have in my mind, if I need to evacuate, here's where I'm going to go. Now, I live in Michigan. We don't, I mean, other than an occasional tornado, we don't have hurricanes. We don't have real earthquakes. I think maybe a couple of times we have felt an earthquake. I don't live in a forest fire zone. I don't live in a flood zone, but I have where I would go if I need to, and the back roads so that I avoid traffic. So map out your location and just know where you're going to go. And you can even write it down because when you're in a panic, you may just not remember. So put it on a piece of paper in your grab and go bag that says, if we are flooding, drive here. Okay? And just know where you're going to go. And also monitor social media to see where pet-friendly shelters and housing locations are in your state. If you want to go into like a government FEMA shelter with your pet. But I will also put below links to pet-friendly hotels and that sort of thing. Okay, so like Bring Fido is a website. Go Pet Friendly is a website. Just remember that if you have a service animal, you can go into any location with your pet according to the American with Disabilities Act. Okay, if you have a service animal, this does not include comfort animals, emotional support animals. It might include assistance animals. Assistance animals are defined under Housing and Urban Development, under HUD, and maybe. So if you have a service animal or an assistance animal, just those two, make sure you put that paperwork, any paperwork that you have, in your Ziploc bag that then goes in your waterproof bag. Okay. So that's all the stuff that you're putting in there. You could also put in just a change of clothing that you normally don't wear. So, maybe a pair of pants, pair of shorts, a shirt that you can just put in there and just forget about. Because I call it a grab and go bag because you're going to grab it and you're going to go. There's no thought. There's no packing. You grab and go. You hear an emergency siren, whatever is happening, and you have 60 seconds to get out. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. Now, for pet-friendly hotels, like I said, I'm going to put links below that you can check, like bring Fido and go pet-friendly. Also check your state emergency management agency because they'll have information on shelters that can take pets. The American Red Cross has a listing of shelters. I'm going to put a link below. And if you click on it, it is the current listing of shelters. Okay, so I'm going to put that link below. And that's why if you're listening to this, I want you to save this video within YouTube so that you can get to it quickly. Okay, because it is very difficult to think when you are in the middle of a very stressful event. So this legwork ahead of time is really going to pay off. Okay, so that's your grab and go bag. Now, what do you need to pack for your pets? If you have cats or small animals, rabbits, birds, turtle, anything that can be put inside a cat carrier, that grab and go bag is going to be in the carrier. Because you're going to obviously go to the carrier to put your pet in there and hey, there's the grab and go bag. There's no thought at all. It's there, it's ready to go. Okay, now for dogs, you're going to want to keep the grab and go bag in a closet near the door where you're going to evacuate. So maybe it's a door going out into the garage or a front door, whatever it is going to be one location where you can get to it quickly, where you can grab and go. What you're going to want in this waterproof bag, you're also going to want a Ziploc bag because you don't want things getting wet and getting ruined. You're going to want photos of your pets printed because if something happens to your phone, having everything on your phone is not going to serve you. Print photos of your pets. They don't have to be professionally printed. Literally, open up a photo on your computer, print it on regular paper. Okay? Just in case if there is an issue, your pet gets lost, you have a photo and you can say this is who they are. Okay? Or if you go into separate shelters, you can say this is my pet. You're also going to want to include adoption records, or if they were a bred animal, you want the sales receipt to prove ownership. You're going to want vaccination records, microchip information. That is crucial. You're going to want that paperwork, medication. I would recommend putting a couple cans of pet food, couple bottles of water. You're going to want the collars with ID tags if they are not wearing them. My cats are never going to wear a collar, but I have collars with their microchip number on it because if there's an emergency, once we are in the car and we get to a safe place, they're wearing a collar and they can just deal with it. Okay? They can just deal with it. Okay, so make sure you put collars as well as leashes. And I would also recommend for small animals like cats, pack harnesses. Okay, because if you, like, I may not be packing cat litter, although I like to have a bag of cat litter in the back of my Subaru. It's also really good in the winter if I get stuck in the snow. But pack harnesses because if you end up at a rest stop and your cat needs to go to the bathroom, okay? Stick a harness on them. First of all, they're going to be super happy out in nature. They're going to be digging in the dirt, going to the bathroom. Pack a harness just in case, all right? You do not need cats taking off on you. And then also a favorite blanket or a toy for them. This is all going to go in their grab and go bag. These bags are not big, okay? They are not big, they are small. And you may be able to put all the items, depending on how many pets you have, you could put it in one grab and go bag, okay? No one ever thinks they're going to be involved in a natural disaster. Okay, it is better to plan, to pack your grab and go bags and never have to use them. Now, be sure to go and review your grab and go bag at least once a year, especially if you have water in there and pet food in there. So pick a day like your birthday or January 1st. Pick a day that you're going to remember that, hey, it's time for my annual review to move things out and move new things in. But like I said, it is better to have the bag than not have the bag. I remember when I moved to Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., and I moved there 6 weeks after a hurricane literally went up the Potomac River. And I lived right off of the Potomac River, and it's like, oh my gosh. And I remember seeing the destruction. And one of my coworkers at the National District Attorneys Association said, you need to have a hurricane evacuation plan for you and your pets. Okay, I'm from Michigan. Okay, we don't deal with hurricanes or sharks. Like that is not our thing. That's not what we do. And that's when I first created a grab and go bag. And while I lived there for 12 years, I think I lived through 2 full-blown hurricanes and a handful of tropical storms. And there were moments where it's like, all right, kitties, we may need to grab and go. But luckily, I didn't have to do that. So that's my message. It's better to have a grab and go bag and be prepared and not have to use it. This is really honoring the human-animal bond. Never leave your pets behind in a disaster. Please, please, never leave them behind. Take them. And if you are able to evacuate by car, you can always hunker down in your car in a safe location. If you have to evacuate by foot, oh my word. Hopefully you have enough hands to have the dogs on their harnesses and to have small pets in carriers so that you can get out. Like I think about the people in the California fires who literally had to evacuate on foot. And they had like a minute's notice. That's why this is so important. You never know what's going to happen. Okay? The goal is to be safe. So please share this with your pet-loving friends so that we can just all be prepared and be safe. Okay? So thank you very much for listening. Please like this podcast. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe because it helps the people who donate and support the SAFeTy program to just see that people actually love the work that we did. And oh, by the way, we are at 400 pet-friendly domestic shelters in 49 states and 6 countries. Isn't that cool? That's why I love this. All right, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time. If you are in harm's way and need help, please visit the Pet Inclusive Shelter listing at SAFeTyProgram.org, call your nearest domestic violence shelter, or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Want to support our efforts and help us keep the Safety Startup Manual free for domestic violence shelters? Consider donating at SAFeTyProgram.org/donate. Your donation saves lives.